With the latest tournament that was a perfect depiction of For Honor at its highest coming to an end, the winner of the tournament and the respective second place have created the tier list based on the highest level of play. Since the ranking was made in a very casual setting with their arguments being valid, yet not being easy to follow, I wanted to summarize this tier list. If you want to listen to the original tier list, the link is in the description and in the pinned comment. So, let's get to it. One more tiny disclaimer. This tier list is a reaction-based tier list, meaning it is based around the fact that you know the animations of the game so well that you can consistently tell if your opponent is pulling that attack through or not. S tier. Heroes in this tier have certain tools at their disposal that substantially elevate them from others and create extremely unfavorable matchups. This doesn't mean that picking any of these heroes will automatically win you games. The odds just favor you slightly more. Pirate. What isn't there to say about Pirate? Pirate has everything. I mean it. Everything. High damage, yes. Completely safe, yes. Insane pressure out of neutral, yes. Ability to overthrow your local government, you bet your ass. You see, Pirate can answer almost any situation with one move. Front step heavy. Oh, you tried to sidestep her neutral hyper, I'm unblockable?
Bruh.
Get nuked off the map. But of course, that isn't all. Her pin, if used from the right stance, is so difficult to react to, because the animation is covered by her player model. Thankfully, it just deals a lot of damage and leaves her plus. Oh yeah, and it wall splat, so of course, how could I forget? She can stuff anything by just forward dodging with a heavy. She can dodge out of every recovery, and the nerfs to her multi-sidestep really didn't change anything about her in Duels. She also basically has no bad matchup apart from a Pharah, and even that one doesn't really favor Pharah by that much. Pirate shares her well-deserved, although not very beloved rank in S tier with one fellow companion. One of the characters of all time. Lawbro hits like a truck, has the highest HP, insanely strong defense due to his sidestep, looping offensive that is very difficult to react to, and is safe to guard break and slower sidesteps. And even if you become Neo from Matrix and start reacting to all unblockables, you can go for chain bashes. That's also loop. If you listen to a word I said, you can already imagine how oppressive his offensive is. But of course, this is not where the story ends, or he wouldn't be in S tier. His defense is also incredibly strong, with his sidestep bash sharing the same iframes as Shaolin's sidestep. With him not only having access to a looping unblockable chain, but also a bash chain, you're bound to get opened up by him. He has a very high stamina efficiency, flows from everything into everything, hits hard while staying absolutely safe in the process. Lawbringer just creates too many problems for your opponents to handle, while basically never having to stop to regain his stamina. With his sheer oppression and the amount of damage he deals, he is a well-deserved S tier. S-. Heroes in this rank share similar strengths to the highest rank, yet some small factors make it so that they barely can stay eye to eye with the absolute best. A Pharah's primary opener, her neutral feintable bash, is the second best neutral tool in the game, apart from Pirate's front step, continuously creating scenarios where her opponents have to play the guessing game. After initializing her combo is where the fun begins for her. By front dodging to continue her chain, she forces out another reaction of her opponent. If they guess incorrectly, she goes for another front flip, then another. If by any miracle her offense is stopped, she can quickly regain it with her neutral bash. She can even use that move mid-chains to stuff a guard break feint attempt. Talking about the neutral bash, if positioned correctly, Every single attack that leads to her red omen follow-ups could lead to a massive wall spell punish. Her kick after any neutral attack isn't unreactable, but if delayed long enough can be very challenging to avoid. She has fast sidesteps and superior lights on neutral and on chain lights, giving her the ability to take back the initiative in many scenarios. Her built-in top-heavy undodgeable makes her neutral kick mix-up very oppressive, because if it isn't parried, the heavy hit stun leads to another front roll that continues the pressure. Only thing really holding her back from getting to the top of the list is her low 120 HP health pool. Ephera easily flips and kicks her way into the S- tier, with all the mix-ups she's throwing out there. Tiandi is the master of looping offense. The second he gets to press any button, you're playing his game. Bashes that are extremely difficult, if not nearly impossible to punish, only complement his otherworldly ability to generate pressure from thin air. He can go for his kick mix-up after any parry, and after blocking most lights, he can do a front step without getting stuffed, forcing your opponent to make a read. If the kick is successfully feinted into a heavy, he can go for another kick. Then another. Then another. You get the idea. If the kick lands, the hit stun is so high that the follow-up bash is also a forced read for your opponent. Flowing into either front step light or a bash makes escaping his pressure extremely difficult. The dodge recoveries allow him to whiff attacks at range to take up space, while leaving him safe from everything. The only thing that is somewhat holding him back is his overall low damage across the board. Add to that if your opponent's hard reads you and parries a front step light, most of your damage advantage is thrown out the damn window. With only 2 shortcomings holding him back, he deserves his spot in S- tier. A tier. Everyone in this tier is strong across the board. When it comes to balance, this is the perfect level that should be strived for, with some heroes possibly leaking to the S- tier. Sand is an absolute mix-up monster. With how often he will be throwing punches, he can open up the hardest to crack turtles. With his level 1 charge punch being completely gut-break invulnerable, he also has a very safe mix-up. The multi-charge on his neutral heavy, coupled with the soft feint into gut-break, makes defending his relentless onslaught nearly impossible. These properties on his heavy also make superior attempts severely harder, since you can never tell when he will actually go through with it. Coming back to his bashes, feinting into a neutral heavy also allows him to stay in the safe version of his mix-up, since every consecutive punch after the first one is gut-break punchable. Centurion and Gladiator were one of the few heroes which stamina damage got reset, so if Sand gut-breaks you, he can deal a lot of stamina damage. Getting parried with a wall behind your back also leads to a 30 damage punish, which he also has going for him. He can start his pressure against any hero and can maintain it just as easily. The only thing that holds him back is a slightly lower health pool. But that's not nearly enough to put him any lower than he currently is. With that, Centurion easily one-punches his opponents while comfortably staying in the A tier. Shaolin does a lot of things right. A strong, easily accessible offense, the highest intended unconditional heavy parry punish, an insane sidestep, and the second best front step in the game. If your opponents can consistently react to combo lights and can tell if you feint your key stance heavies, his offense gets weakened a lot. But apart from that, he has a lot of little gimmicks that do wonders. Dodging out of his key stance allows him to deflect and front step bash out of it. His regular mix-up in the key stance can be used to great effectiveness, because just how easily he can enter his key stance. Any attack that doesn't bump off your opponent's guard or isn't parried will immediately go into your key stance. When forced on the defensive, his front step heavy that can be feinted and the iframes on his side dodge are the perfect tools to regain momentum. His superior block lights and his key stance can occasionally be used against certain sidesteps, but it is ill-advised to use them in neutral, because just how telegraphed they are. Shaolin easily enters his stance in A tier and waits for someone to mess with him. Peacekeeper seems unassuming at first, but the second she gets it to bleed, which will happen either through one bad reaction or her insanely strong sidesteps, she becomes an absolute rushdown monster. I don't know where in her tiny 5'1" body these damage numbers are stored, but she hits like a goddamn train. With just how fast she can throw bullshit at you, you're bound to mess up eventually. And even if you outlive her bleed, her sidesteps are an insane tool to get you back into the blender. Something that also has to be said about her sidesteps is that they are one of the highest damaging sidesteps in the game. They deal 18 damage and their recovery animation is so fast that her sidesteps can only be effectively punished if they get parried. The only thing that is holding her back are certain attacks against her bleed, like fuzzy guarding or snorting a kilo of coke in order to react to her lights. With her racking up your medical bill with every bleeding stab she does, she absolutely deserves her rank in A tier. Ocelot goes in hard and fast. I should have phrased that differently. Ocelot doesn't really care what his opponents do. He will get into his chain bash and it won't be fun. All of his neutral tools are good, with one of his main moves, the front step bash, leading into another vortex mix-up. This all boils down to him being very in your face at all times, constantly creating threats out of thin air. His zone shuts down certain counter mix-ups and can be used to steal the neutral game from your opponents. His combo and the lights are just fast enough that sometimes sprinkling them in will lead to some extra chip damage. The decapitation vortex shouldn't be used because it is just way too easy to react to and is gut break punishable. That move should stay in Dominion to confirm a lot of damage, but don't use it in duels. Stick with his normal bash. His heavy unblockable is somewhat reactable, but can still find a usage during intense back and forth moments. His mix-up after light hit stun is gut break punishable, meaning he plays the game a whole lot fairer than other heroes. Ocelot will get into his mix, whether you like it or not, leaving him in the A tier, whether you like it or not. Aramusha uses his Ring the Bell soft feint combined with a flurry of attacks in order to chip his opponents to death. With just how many heavies he can throw out one after the other, chipping your opponents close to death is a solid option for him. Due to the hit stun his heavies apply, dodging out of Musha's pressure is impossible. His soft feinted lights can deal damage from time to time, but it really isn't his strong suit. Another way to get damage in, apart from his soft feints and his chip damage, is his zone attack. Since the unblockable part of the zone attack is extremely difficult to react to. Sadly, the first part is very telegraphed and will often get parried if used in neutral. If you get a heavy parry though, it's free real estate. His blade stance allows him to stay safe from non-bash sidesteps and zoning with basic attacks. His unblockable chain finishers are okay when it comes to reactability, but since they're guard break punishable if they're sidestepped, they can come with a hefty punish. With his stamina consumption being so low and his barrage of attacks being so oppressive, Aramusha chips his way into the A tier. Jormungandr is hard carried by one move, his front step heavy. It's gaining hyper armor so damn early and being feintable makes his counter offensive into a force to be reckoned with. Having the option to use his front step heavy at any point in your opponent's chains makes creating an offensive against him a nightmare. The follow-up heavies can also delete people if they get hit near a wall, looping into another hit. With how the animations and the properties of the combo heavy work, your opponent will have no choice but to react to another unblockable or combo bash. If your arm lands a guard break, his extra damage is also just ridiculous. If you catch anyone lacking near a wall, they will become past tense really fast. The front step bash and combo bash both are also okay, but nothing special. Jormungandr has access to a similar mix-up as Orochi, where he can go for a front step and immediately input a zone attack in order to catch his opponent dodging. When it comes to his in-combo bash attack, it doesn't follow the same guard break vulnerability rules as many other bash attacks. Both a light and a heavy hit stun will leave Jormungandr guard break vulnerable. With both his bashes and his unblockables being okay tools, and his front step being by far the strongest defensive tool apart from Shinobi's double dodge, which, in the process, leaves Jormungandr screaming his lungs out in A tier. Raider can use his high damage output combined with quick access to hyper armor to deal some serious damage. His unblockable, although guard break punishable, is very hard to correctly punish due to the storming tab soft feint that comes with it. Whiffing anything near Raider will also lead to a quick death because of his front step guard break. Generally, reacting to the zone is hard as hell. Factor into the already difficult to react to animation of the zone attack that he can also go for a soft feint light, and you just realize how difficult it is to defend against Raider's offense. With the occasional soft feint light thrown into the mix, and hyper armor on top of that, you're bound to break through your opponent's defenses eventually, with every single mistake of his opponents being punished severely because of his high damage numbers. Something that is also worth mentioning about his zone attack is, even though Raider can soft feint his zone attack after a heavy hit stun, the properties of his zone attack still allow his opponents to sidestep, so watch out for that. With how fast you will be flowing into your unblockable mix-up, most opponents won't stand a chance. And, if all fails, trading with his hyper armor can also be used to great effectiveness. Raider's overall high damage numbers and constant hard to react unblockables leave him spinning in the A tier. Gouki, our favorite sushi roll. This absolute unit of a man has the same health pool as Slowbro, which is already a massive plus. Shugoki has many tools at his disposal, giving him options. Some better than others, yet none are useless. Him having a sidestep bash does wonders for his defense. The latest nerfs to his headbutt made it so that chaining on whiff is impossible, meaning you will have to be a good bit less aggressive. Still, hyper armor and hard hitting unblockables can turn the round into your favor in an instant. Enhanced lights make it so he can check you in neutral while gaining momentum. Sprinkling in the occasional headbutt into your mix-up will catch opponents off guard. He has one of the biggest health swings with his Demon Embrace, both on wall splat and light parry, dealing 20 damage while healing him for 10 and restoring both players' stamina. Getting guard broke near wall against Gouki is overall a death sentence, since he can go for his heavy follow-up that leads into a guaranteed light into another mix. There is barely anything bad I can say about him, apart from him being guard break punishable on full heavy charge. Due to his big health pool, not even that is a massive shortcoming. Shugoki has a well-deserved place in A tier. Virtuosa is one of the few placements which I disagree with when it comes to Ewop's rating. There simply hasn't been enough playtime against her to define her rank. She only has one problem: getting out of neutral, which she absolutely can do with her bash zone and front step. And after that, she has a looping offensive that leaves little to no breathing room for opponents. Her unblockable animation is very hard to react to, and her kick is unreactable. She can also perform a side heavy in top posture to soft feint into a top light, re-entering the stance. This little trick will make it so that you can continue a bash chain after you're unblockable. Her lights out of her top stance are very fast and will occasionally catch opponents off guard, if not overused. Her kick from the right stance being able to wall splat could also be useful, but only time can tell. What can be said though is that her left stance is useless in duels except for out of stamina punishes. With her overall offense being so solid and looping into each other, our least favorite Italian can aura farm in A tier. War Mummy is basically a born duelist. She has everything one would need in 1v1s. A multiple charge level vortex attack that she can access after light and a sidestep, giving her a really strong offensive. With her impale counter follow up dealing so much damage, guessing correctly against an opponent is rewarded immensely. Her hyper armor on combo heavy finishers is a nice addition to her kit, but really nothing you should rely on. Her enhanced lights were removed a few patches back, making her way less oppressive, but that didn't kill the hero outright. With how quickly she can do one front step and immediately enter a vortex mix-up, she still can't spiral out of control. Since the comparison is often being made, one has some clear advantages and disadvantages. Going over only the biggest ones, one can loop his mix-up, constantly leaving your opponents in the blender. Warmonger has the best counter parry punish in the game on wall split, making attacking into her incorrectly a living hell. For completion's sake, let me say that her sidestep unblockable isn't really all that good. It can be interrupted by a light mid-animation and is gut break vulnerable. Since both her sidestep bash and unblockable sidestep are gut break vulnerable on startup, she can't use them to escape mix-ups if they're fainted into gut break. Crazy to think that just removing the properties of one attack can bring a hero down so much, but here we are, in the lower A tier for War Mummy. Warden uses his bash mix-up to great effectiveness. Since his heavy unblockables are pretty reactable, his offensive solely relies on his bash, that allows for a looping offense. Since his bash is gut break punishable though, one mistake while being out of position, meaning near a wall, could lead to you blowing up. Double rolling out of his mix-up will also lead to the Warden landing massive damage, due to the launch on his attacks. The same things I've mentioned for Warmonger also apply to Warden. Warden's inability to use a sidestep attack to avoid a gut break leaves him weaker on the defensive. His crushing counter from the top stance also barely finds any meaningful use during a 1v1 scenario, because your opponents will always bait it out. Even though reads during his offense are punished heavily, the sheer looping pressure he creates is enough to bring him to A tier, with the only thing holding him back being the recent changes to stamina damage. Griffin is interesting. Technically having the exact same mix-up on his combo ender as Kensei, with one key difference. His one is an unreactable bash. What also differentiates Kensei from Griffin is that this old man actually has a front step bash that allows him to quickly get to his mix-up. Dodging his kick combo ender leaves him gut break vulnerable, but for 32 damage that seems fair. Landing his kick, on the other hand, leads to such a massive hit stun that your next front step bash has to be reacted to, meaning no sidestep attack or stuffing it with a light. It's either you dodge it, or you're going back into the kick blender. Getting guard broken by Griffin is also something that should be avoided, because if he gets a wall splat, it's 32 damage with another front step bash mix-up coming through. Any parry will lead into his kick, making it so that you're forced into his mix-up more often than you'd like. Griffin's Vortex combo ender, combined with how much hit stun it applies and how often he can do it, brings him into a solid A tier, breaking his opponent's bones in the process. Shaman is actually more scary than anticipated. She can zone out opponents with her bash extremely well, creating openings at ranges other heroes couldn't even dream about. With her bash being able to wall splat and leading into a guaranteed bleed step, things only get substantially worse for her opponents. Landing a bash on a bleeding opponent is the biggest life swing in the game, dealing 35 damage and healing her for 15. Losing a round after such a massive swing is pretty difficult. Her deflect also deals an insane 27 damage and applies bleed. Her soft feint lights aren't unreactable, but going from multiple hard feints into a soft feint will throw off even the most unemployed of players. Her unblockable isn't really usable because of the animation, but she really doesn't need it. With you either getting deflected or getting hit by a soft feint light, you will eventually start bleeding, giving the shaman the option for a massive swing. Since her bite becomes such a big threat once you start bleeding, baiting out opponents' reactions with it becomes way easier. It should be obvious, but I still want to mention it. Her neutral bash and her bite bash both are gut break punishable. And for her last passive ability, Blood Trance, meaning her ability to heal a tiny bit of the damage she deals to a bleeding opponent, also isn't going to win you matches, but is nice to have. With just how fast she can turn the tables, she deserves her spot in A tier. With massive damage and questionable timing for his hyper armor, JJ swings into the game, using his Shifu stance in neutral to punish most bash attempts with ease, hence leading to a crippling hit stun that makes his follow-up unblockables undodgeable if soft feinted. Front step bashes coupled with the occasional heavy parry lead to a somewhat stamina intense mix-up that nonetheless is very difficult to react to and makes opponents go poof. With the top heavy unblockable being the one you should be using the most, since the animation of that attack is the hardest to react to out of all of his combo heavy unblockables. Similarly to Tiamdi, he can also use a backwards moving heavy to create a lot of distance while staying safe from everything but undodgeables using his Shifu stance. One of his best mix-ups is a front step bash into a zone, followed up by a top heavy unblockable. As mentioned, the zone attack will do a lot of hit stun, making it so that the follow-up unblockable can only be parried, since your opponent is in such a deep hit stun that his sidestep attempt won't even be registered. JJ is a very simple, straightforward hero with a large health pool and hard-hitting attacks, and his Shifu stance enhances his defense greatly, leaving him and his back pain in A tier. Playing Shinobi correctly is an inputting nightmare. He has the best and safest defense in the game with his sidestep into front step heavy kick, making attacking into him a really bad idea. If played at his maximum potential, all mix-ups of your opponents can be safely denied by using his double dodge. But that's where the story sadly ends. His main way to start a fight, his front step bash, deals little to no damage. The links he gets after a sickle throw also leave a lot to be desired. His second bash in his chain leads to no damage while consuming a lot of stamina and being gut break punishable. Since this option leads to so little damage, dodging it and risking to get hit by the very high damaging sickle rain combo just isn't worth it. Most Shinobis will just self-destruct at some point by going for mix-ups way out of their league. All of this leads to most opponents just never dodging follow-up bashes, since by the time you die, the Shinobi will have ran out of stamina 4 times. This character is a perfect representation of what happens when you spec everything into defense. His deflect into bash sickle rain is also a very high punish that works against almost every hero in the roster. With his defense being so damn safe and extremely annoying, his shortcomings when it comes to offense are balanced out, leaving him at a respectable A ranking. Varangian Guard has this spot on the tier list only because of her potential. If she solely played aggressively with her unblockable finishers, she falls down to B tier, because of their animation making them reactable, but admittedly not very easy to react to. Her follow-up headbutt though is completely unreactable, if you can reach it. The ranking guard's place in this tier list is solely based around the fact of how well you can use her defensive. What I mean by that is, if some coked out, unemployed end boss out there can react to if you pull through or feint your neutral attacks, her shield stance gives her insane value. Pulling this off for one round in a tournament is possible and has happened, but keeping that concentration throughout multiple rounds just isn't human. Yet, there still is an argument to be had that even if 70% of these neutral interactions are reacted to correctly, leads to her demolishing most opponents. With that being said, her ranking in this tier is the one that could be argued for the most, but our good friend Ewop gave her the place in A tier. Highlander asks one question at the start of the game. Are you gonna let me go into my offensive stance? If the answer is yes, you're getting blown out the water. Highlander's bashes let you feel the wrath of 1,000 suns and deals so much hit stun that he can't be interrupted out of his next one, leaving his opponents less options to interrupt his rampage. The biggest problem Highlander still has is entering his offensive stance. With every single one of his neutral moves being very easy to shut down, his ability to enter his offensive stance is severely hampered. There are two exceptions to this. Firstly, a superior light, which is pretty predictable if constantly thrown out. Even though the superior block light only applies a light hit stun, due to the Highlander being able to flow into the offensive stance, your opponents won't be able to interrupt you. The second somewhat reliable way to enter his offensive stance is his Celtic Curse. Even though you can tell this side attack apart from the front one, his soft feint animation into the stance is so damn cursed that correctly reacting to it is very difficult. Highlander has to tread carefully though, since always soft feinting into offensive stance will lead to his opponents adapting. What can be said about Highlander is that if you get the ball rolling, his opponent won't have long before he's back in the loading screen, giving our Viking on steroids his ranking in A tier. B tier. Things are already starting to look a bit bleak when it comes to B tier. The lack of crucial tools starts to really hurt the heroes in this rating. Yet, they still can get the job done. Senhu has some things going for him. For starters, his bash can loop into itself, already creating a usable offensive. His front step heavy can be feinted and deals a whopping 24 damage, making it perfect for stuffing goblet attempts. After a bash, he can go for a zone that deals more damage and gives a higher hit stun, this allowing your opponents to stuff his next mix-up. Compared to other looping front steps like Tiandi, Sanhu's recovery is terrible, leaving him wide open for most sidesteps. His zone has an insane amount of lunge, making it good for outranging opponents. Since his zone attack is also undodgeable, it helps him out in certain matchups. Apart from that though, he has some glaring problems. His sidesteps being a pseudo mix-up makes it so that he can't use them on the defensive to stay safe from goblet attempts, making most offensives against him way more deadly. His combo lights are highly telegraphed, making them very easy to react to, and his combo heavies share similar problems, with the animation just being somewhat too easy to react to. Even though they hit like a truck, actually landing them is pretty difficult. Superior block sidesteps are a high risk, high reward way to stop the momentum of Sanhu's opponents dead in their track. If the animations for his heavies were slightly altered, it would easily catapult him into A rank, but for the time being, he has a spot in B tier. Warlord is the most fundamentalist hero in the entirety of For Honor. He doesn't really have any complex moves. No soft feints, no recovery cancels, and hell, even no unblockables. His superior lights on defense and his headbutt, combined with hype armor on offense, are the only things at his disposal. Which, as funny as this sounds, isn't all that bad. His overall high damage, especially when landing a successful guard break on your opponent, is his saving grace. With the removal of the stamina damage, his parry riposte has basically become absolutely useless. But he still sucks a lot of stamina while throwing. What can be said is that he has no good matchups and basically no terrible matchups. Sometimes his full stance has usages, other times it is just pointless. As mentioned, his high damage numbers and high health pool are the only two things he has going for him. With basically his only move to start a fight being a headbutt that doesn't lead into anything but back into neutral. All of this combined leaves Warlord full blocking in B tier. Khatoon suffers from a continued pressure problem. Her soft feint lights are somehow the easiest to react to in the game, even though they share the exact same speed as other soft feinted lights. Leaving her with only her heavy into soft feint kick that confirms the light and brings her back to neutral because of the hit stun. She can use her running stance, but reacting to 400 millisecond running lights in high play really isn't that hard, and her pin animation is so bad that you can react to it 9 times out of 10. She needs to be able to go into another kick to start her mix up again, meaning she has to get back to neutral, which really isn't good after just getting a light hit stun. Look at Griffin. After landing his main mix up, he also goes back into neutral, just like Khatoon. But he enters the neutral game with a heavy hit stun, easily allowing him to do whatever he wants without having to fear his opponent's intentions. Khatoon only having one good feint bash mix-up that she can only perform once before she has to drop her flow and go back into neutral really leaves a lot to be desired, bringing her to the B tier. Continuing the trend of weak offensives, let's talk about Kensei. Kensei has one way to start a fight, a part of a parry. His top heavy bash leads into his main mix-up, the iconic top heavy unblockable. It hits for 34 damage, making it the highest wall splat damage in the game. If he stays close to a wall, which is very easily done in the ranked Duels map, any mistakes against him blow you out the game. Using it when it isn't guaranteed though is problematic due to the guard break vulnerability, which is fair when factoring in the highest damage, but fair isn't enough to be top tier. Any attacks thrown from the top stance against Kensei are absolutely pointless, since he can use his front step heavy to stuff feint into guard break attempts. He just obeys the rules of the game too much to be in a higher tier. His top heavy unblockable isn't the hardest to react to attack in the game, but incorrectly reacting to it deals such massive damage that it still is a somewhat solid tool. His other combo finishers also aren't really useful. Sometimes trading with his side heavy uninterruptible attacks is okay, but will rarely win you fights. With his combo finishers apart from his top one being so situational and even the top one not being that threatening when thrown out in neutral, Kensei just can't get any higher than B tier. Oroshi's rating is solely based on your opponent's ability to react to your top heavy unblockable. His top heavy UB deals massive damage while keeping him completely safe and allowing him to keep his combo up. His front step bash can chain into itself while being basically unpunishable. Since he can dodge out of any of his recoveries, baiting out attacks is also an option. What really makes his defense stand out is his deflect, dealing high damage and working on every hero apart from Black Prior. His sidestep lights being undodgeable also help him in certain scenarios, but it's nothing you should rely on. Doing a front step bash and then using a zone attack to react to your opponent's dodge is a very strong neutral tool, although it chews through a lot of stamina. As I was saying, Oroshi's strength really relies on if your opponent is able to react to his top heavy unblockable. With that, he deserves his place in B tier for the time being. Berserker. Well, Zerg lacks a meaningful offense. His unblockable is very reactable and stops his chain. No bashes of any sort. Of course, you could use the faint lights to open your opponents up, but not only is the stamina consumption bad on them, but they aren't impossible to block, sending you back to neutral in the process. There is a tech where you can use unlocked soft fainted lights to drastically increase the speed of a light, making it basically impossible to react to. But that alone won't win games. His deflect though is one of the best in the game, since it just gives you a gut break. This strong deflect can be abused to react to neutral attacks from your opponents and punish them heavily for it. Him being able to feint and immediately gain hyper armor with a follow-up heavy is something, but it just isn't enough. All in all, Zerker is severely lacking in the offensive department, only being safe by the strongest deflect in the game, leaving him trading with himself in C tier. Black Prior in Duels is a stark contrast to his performance in Dominion. He really doesn't have a lot of things going for him in duel scenarios. For starters, his unblockable is really not that hard to react to, already making it pretty obsolete. Combine this with the fact that if you use his unblockable after light hits done, your opponent has the option to throw a light himself and trade with you, making the unblockable even more useless. The changes to stamina damage also hurt him a lot, because his zone is now a serious stamina investment just for one light. BP can do a front dodge and do a reaction zone attack that will always hit, but he can basically only do this once, due to the insane stamina cost. His full guard can be used to counter neutral bashes, but it really isn't any better than pre-dodging the bash. Because Black Prior can go into his bulwark stance after a dodge, certain multiple charge vortex mix-ups can also be denied by him more effectively. If you absolutely want to parry an attack, flipping it will lead to more damage, so he has that going for him. But becoming too predictable with how many times you're going to flip your opponent's attacks will lead to you getting gut broken a whole lot. Fundamentally, only having the most basic of mix-ups at his disposal, meaning a front step bash, really isn't doing his offense any favors. The combo bash after landing a light is unreactable, but the only reliable way to get to it is either by stuffing your opponent or superior blocking them. Black Prior in Duels just can't deliver the same presence as he does in Dominion, leaving him crab walking in his full block stance in B tier. Nushia is kinda awkward when it comes to ranking. She really doesn't have anything too complicated. No bashes, just her hooks and the mix-up that comes with them. The hooks are in no way bad, of course, it's just that they're not that threatening. Nuxia somehow has the same problem as Valkyrie, where landing the first attack and going into a proper mix-up is the most difficult part. Once she gets to land anything though, she can somewhat spiral out of control. Her heavy hit stun allows her to use a hook that can't be guard broken, which allows her to flow into another heavy on reaction. The damage is okay, but that really isn't all that much, you know? Of course, if you guess incorrectly multiple times, you will get blown up. But that's the case with every hero. The biggest problem she has is getting to her first attack, since you're guard break vulnerable for your first mix-up, which is really bad. Apart from that, her fast lights can catch opponents off guard, but really don't pose that big of a threat, since they give so little hit stun. She's good, it's just that shutting her out in neutral is just way too easy. And any correct read against her leads to her getting guard broken, which is just unacceptable. With a lack of safe openings, she sadly goes into B tier, but hey, it's not like anyone plays her, right? Kyoshin. The thing that is thrown out the most in public matches, his stance unblockable is easily reacted to. His combo bash attack leads into a light and is guard break punishable after light hits them. Since every move out of his blade stance is easily reacted to, using it doesn't really give him any advantages. His front step bash leads into a light that can come into his combo bash, but as mentioned, if your opponent dodges that bash, Kyoshin is guard break vulnerable. If you get hit by the front step and the combo light, it basically does nothing but tickle you. Needing to flow into the blade stance that we have established doesn't really do a whole lot after the mix-up. Also, it's just icing on the already terrible cake. To give him the benefit of the doubt, he has superior block lights and a front step heavy that does deal a good amount of damage, but that's everything I'm willing to give him. With so many shortcomings, Kyoshin can spin his sword in B tier, where he belongs. Poor Valkyrie. She could be so fucking cool, but in the stage she is now, she just lacks almost everything. Her shield stance is a hybrid tool between offense and defense, but it somehow falls short on both ends. Of course, she has the ability to dodge out of the stance, cancel into superior light, and a deflect, or just feinting into neutral. Yet, the way you access it mid combo is just terrible. The major problem is giving your opponent two options to punish you with a guard break for a measly 18 damage. And that's just sad. Add on top of that these bashes can't chain into each other and you have one of the worst offensive tools in the game. Her sweep sadly also is very reactable. Mid overall damage with a very weak, heavily punishable offense leaves her in the spot she is right now. The lowest B tier. C tier. Yeah, you really have to put in a lot more effort to compete against heroes in higher ranks. C tier is in no way useless, but certain, often major problems hold them back substantially. Hito. Kiryu suffers from two major problems. His incredibly low HP of just 120 and his really bad neutral offensive. All of his neutral heavies and lights really don't have a lot going for him. Combo lights and his chain, and his charged heavies are probably the most reactable attack in the game. His kick or sweep mix-up really is just a more stamina intense and weaker version of Highlander's kick mix-up that is also completely guard break vulnerable. His sidestep is also pretty weak and he has no defensive tools apart from that. While lacking a neutral bash really hurts him the most, the rest of his kit also doesn't help him enough, leaving him coughing up his lungs due to asthma in C tier. Conqueror sadly has very little going for him when it comes to duels. He has by far the easiest to react to unblockables, and his inability to chain bashes isn't doing him any favors either. His only viable way to get any damage are his bashes, with his combo bashes being very hard to get into because his neutral attacks are absolutely ass. His front step is good, but front step bashing your opponent 50 times during one round just isn't viable. You just need more options to create a meaningful offense than a front step bash. He has two things going for him that keep him from falling any lower. His 140 HP health pool that, especially in duels, allows more room for error, and his insane sidestep that has iframes like a Dark Souls roll. Oh, and he can't be sidestep punished with non-vortex sidesteps, but who cares? Too little, too late. Leaving our favorite little tin can at C tier. a lot of problems have to come together to end up in D tier. Heroes in this tier are severely lacking when it comes to their offensive capabilities, having to rely on gimmicks to close out a fight. Gladiator is just bad. Bad neutral attacks, terrible bashes, with the only one that can't be reacted to leading to no damage. His Q is reactable, his toe steps are reactable, his lights are reactable, and everything he does is just reactable, leaving him with basically no offense. There is one thing going for him though, his deflect. With it having the potential to deal the highest amount of damage in the game, deflecting an opponent near a wall will nuke the health bar of any opponent, with 3 deflects being enough to kill almost the entire hero roster. The deflect being his only usable tool though, that doesn't even work against every hero. He can't be placed any higher than D tier. Asking everybody watching the question, are you not entertained? Nobushi is, well, yeah, I guess. Nobushi technically has no real offense, since all of her combo kicks, even delayed heavily, are still reactable. Using her superior range with backstab lights and utilizing her hidden stance are the only ways to deal any damage. Her potential damage though is through the roof, especially if you factor in her increased damage while bleeding. But you won't get any damage. One of the few things that are hard to react to are her soft feints out of her zone attack. By hard, I mean marginally difficult. With the animation of her zone being so telegraphed and slow, you're basically only able to use it after parry, further limiting your playstyle to be defensive. Having to rely on basically no offense with also just a somewhat okay defense isn't enough to compete in the highest level, giving our favorite first trap her spot in D tier. F tier is reserved for the 2 worst heroes in the entire game when it comes to duels: Magi and Sohai. So let's just wrap these 2 up really quick, shall we? Starting off with Magi, because I have something personal to say about Sohai. Magi, god damn it. Well, he has nothing. His unblockables in his X stance is very reactable. But hey, it's safe if you switch stances, which means you will have to re-switch stances again. His bash deals the lowest damage of any mix-up in the game, but hey, it does chain. But only for 9 damage. I mean, you could go for a zone on bash, which would deal a total of 12 damage, and this allow you to flow into another bash. But it's something, I guess. Both his follow-up light and heavy are very reactable, leaving him with basically nothing. Magi really lacks everything when it comes to duels. A low damage mix-up with no defensive options. Magi does deserve his rank in the F tier, with one fellow companion. For everyone who has skipped to this part and wants me to roast Sohai for his inability to do anything but tickle people, I'm sorry to disappoint. For everyone who has watched up until now, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. This video has taken up so much more time to edit than I'd like to admit, but here it is. I could use this time and tell you guys just in depth why Sohai is so bad in duels, but I don't want this video to be 2 hours long. I want to use this segment for something special, because everybody knows that Sohai sucks. This noodle-armed warrior monk has given me a community which I'm very proud of, with people supporting me no matter what silly ideas or goofy mistakes I make. And yeah, I'm I'm really thankful for everything, guys. With all of that being said, and my rambling finally coming to an end, I have just one more thing to say. Watch yourselves out there, okay?